believe it's cold and wet there. Steve, tell us what's happening in the world from a peaceful point of view.
Well, if we look at peace in the last 12 months, it's deteriorated by about 0.3%. Now, it's not much, but if we look at it, 81 countries improved and 80 deteriorated. We start to look into the reasons behind the deteriorations. It comes back to intensity of internal conflict, which has increased. But ironically, if we look at the number of deaths from conflict, it's actually decreased over the time. So what we're finding is more countries are engaged in some form of internal conflict, but not at the levels which we've seen in Iraq or Syria. But still, it's something which we have to watch going forward in the future.
All right, so slight improvement, but I should imagine that whatever gains have been made will be undermined by COVID-19?
Yes, well, I think COVID-19 is really a game changer for the international geopolitical scene. So if we're looking at the lockdowns, coming out of the back end of the lockdowns, that's increasing a lot of economic pressure, and we're going to see sharp reductions in the economies of many, many countries around the world, especially developed countries. This is going to have a knock-on effect, and we believe for most indicators in the Global Peace Index, they'll actually deteriorate. There are a couple which will probably improve. One of them is likely to be militarisation, as money is directed away from the military towards propping up domestic economies. But we'd expect a whole range relating to political instability, demonstrations, civil unrest, and possibly a violent crime to increase as well over the ensuing 2 years.
Strange times when the UAE ranks higher than the UK, isn't it? But tell us about the two regions which are pretty successful here.
So if we look at it, North America actually improved in peace, which that's mainly on the back of the US, but a lot of that was on the back of less battlefield deaths as they draw down their troops out of Afghanistan and Iraq. The other area which improved was Russia and Eurasia, and that's on the back of mainly on the lessening of conflicts within the region, and that's in less battlefield deaths. So that's really sort of the main improvements in that region. Russia also improved, which improved on the back of a number of indicators regarding violence, which have improved. Things like homicides, level of violent crime, and actually the number of people incarcerated.
Steve, what do we do with this knowledge now?
Well, I think what we can see, if we go back over the last decade, let's say, what we're seeing is that there's been a large increase in demonstrations, riots, and general strikes. In fact, globally, they're up over 200%, and this is a global phenomenon. And they're not related to any one issue. There are a whole range of issues ranging from race to economic hardship, police brutality, to riots against government and governments as well. So what we expect with the economic downturn, this trend is just going to end up getting turbocharged. And I think that's something which is a real concern for many countries in the world.
Were you able to find a nugget of positivity in this, something that we can all desperately hold on to in these horrible times?
Well, I must admit, as I'm doing the interviews, I'm actually feeling depressed. It's pretty tough. But if we look at two nuggets of positive news, what we've found with the lockdowns, it's actually decreased the levels of homicide, violent crime, drug-related crimes. But on the downside, it's increased the levels of domestic violence, suicide, and also things related to mental hardship or anguish. One of the other areas of positivity, which you can see, is that for a number of countries, it's going to be much harder for them to be able to fund the proxy wars. So we're likely to see Iran, let's say, finding it much harder to fund Hezbollah. Russia and Turkey will find it much harder to fund the militias, let's say, in Syria and Saudi Arabia, it'll be much harder to find the funds to, let's say, support the Yemen government. So that may be another silver lining.
Okay, well, that's a pretty big one. Steve, thanks for that. Let's leave it on